I am well pleased that you could come and I welcomed you. Herein, we will try to focus our attention on why our generation is lost. Herein, we will focus on why we are not reaping the fruit that our previous era or our previous generation has painstakingly produced. What is lacking? Now we have to go back to our metaphor about the map and the compass. Why our generation is still lost despite having the map and the compass. Now these 9 myths that I have enumerated will actually constitute the essence of our omission. This myth constitutes the body of our present day influence. Where we get them, it's insight or something that has a bearing on the way we do things today, or its origin, or caused why we do things in a particular manner, the basis of how things are done, or the starting point. I hope you get that, because this myth, like I said, is the body of our present day influence that has some bearing on the way we do things today. And to properly understand that, I have decided that I have to rearrange the way I have ordered these 9 myths. Now, my purpose for doing that is actually to try to put them in chronological order so that the first myth, we will see why the first myth resulted to the next myth. In other words, it is a resulting order or an after effect. So I want to put it in a narrative form or a story to see why, despite we have the map and the compass, our generation is still lost. What is the cost of it? So let's begin with the first myth, and this is very important because I would want to use this as the basis of why this first myth resulted to the next myth, and on and on and on and on, like A resulted to B, and C and D, and like that. So in this first myth, this will have to bring us back to the 1900, when the Model T vehicle of Ford Motors was popularized. Now, remember that prior to the production of this Model T, the cost of the vehicles then, as well as the production of these vehicles, was very hectic. But because of the late Henry Ford's discovery or innovation on mass production and the exchange of forklifts to conveyors, we have to remember that prior to this, the transport of heavy equipments or heavy materials from one place to another in a factory, they have to use forklifts. But then, because of the idea of using conveyor types, then the assembly line did not only become more orderly, it was also more efficient. Now, what was original of the discovery or the innovation of the late Henry Ford on mass production was not so much about the conveyor, because it was there then, but what was brilliant was the discovery of his principle, and it says the breaking down of the whole into components only to build it back up again in a more effective and productive combination. Now, because of his brilliant innovation or discovery, the cost of the T model came down dramatically, and the cost of producing it was not as tedious as it used to be, so people can then already afford this Model T vehicle, and even the people producing them can also afford and buy one for themselves or for their own use. But not only did the Model T become popular, his discovery or innovation also became the model of economic expansion and technological progress then, to standardize products in huge volume. And you know what? it was using special purpose machinery designed to permit workers with low skill levels to operate. Now, because it was the breaking down of a whole into specialized tasks, the workers then, these low-level workers then operate this way. These workers, they go to the factory and they only have to do one thing over and over and over and over again. If, let's say, it is tightening a particular nut in a particular place, and that is what they do over and over and over again. So they became skilled in doing that. So altogether, this type of model, this breaking down of specialized tasks became or caught the eye of the world then that spread to other various disciplines, not only in the business world, but even to the academic. Now, the practitioners of medicine then were just a general practitioner. But because this started to evolve and the idea of breaking down components, then we do not only have neurologists for nerves, we do not only have cardiologists, we do not only have orthopedics, and then we also have surgeons and internists, etc., etc., etc. So I hope you see what I'm trying to drive at here, that what caught the eye of the world was the breaking down of the whole into smaller components. But you see how these things evolve. You see how these things has progressed from the assembly line to medicine and then people started to see things. People started to see the brilliance of it, that they have to start breaking down everything into smaller components. But think again. Okay? So you see the difference? Now hear me out. If one specialized task is pushed to its limits, it will always diminish the other specialized tasks. Because when one specialized task is pushed to its limit, it will always reap both tasks that results in less overall efficiency. Think of the big companies. Because of this understanding of breaking down the whole into smaller components, it was also perceived to divide work into departments and units. So if you have a big whole, you divide it into departments like the finance department, we have the marketing department, we have the production department, we have all these kinds of departments and units, and this became and because it became very large, these departments has become silos. When this became silos, information also broke down. Now we have to remember that this thing that caught the world was only part of the discovery of Henry Ford, because it does not only specify the breaking down of specialized tasks. What was the innovation of the late Henry Ford? It is breaking it all down into its components only to build it up again in a more effective and productive combination. This part we have left. This part we have forgotten. People were so caught up with something that is so brilliant that the second part was forgotten on the building it back up again in a more effective and productive combination. But this has already set in this brilliant idea, this thing that caught the world about breaking down the whole into smaller components. So we have there the first myth that says specialized task produces excellent results. In effect to that, we have the second myth, how a company should gauge workers' contribution. Now we have to go back again to the industrial era, where the concept of hiring hands to function like machines or robots, because back then machines were not as sophisticated as that we have now. So it will be very natural that the contribution is awarding people for what they do. Isn't that natural? Now think with me. If your task is really just to tighten a particular bolt in certain way, and that is your part in the total production of the entire vehicle, then I would say you will see it as a very small contribution to the whole production of the vehicle. That's one way to look at it. This is exactly why we have command controls. This is exactly why workers' contribution is seen this way. This particular myth, it has some bearing on the way we do things today, or the cost, or why we do things in a particular manner. Another thing why I would say that this is counterproductive is because since we reward people this way, it would also be very natural that if you go to the factory and all that you do in the factory is to tightening nuts over and over and over and over again, I think it will be very natural that you wouldn't give a damn about what other people are doing as long as you're doing your job, because that is your contribution to the entire assembly. And because of this, what happens? Since people are rewarded that way, it is a system that does not spur a corporate culture. It becomes a system that does not spur collaboration. You do your thing, I do mine, you do this. I don't know what's going on in the other department. For as long as we are doing what is right, then it is okay. That kind of culture, that is counterproductive. Now, to continue on, we have this other myth that states that smart people are the ones on top. Again, I would say that this is a natural response. Natural in the sense that I think I have picked this up earlier, but let me try to demonstrate it clearer in this myth, that because we reward people on what they do, then we see workers as one who is less important, and the foreman is more important than the production worker, and the manager is more important than this and this and this, and on and on and on. There are two things that came out from this particular myth that we are describing. Now, first is that let us again go back to the manufacturing industry. Suppose you tighten your nuts, then you have a foreman over you who has more experience, because during the time, of course, the one who tightens the nut has the low skill. So here is a foreman who tries to oversee the one who is tightening the nuts. And then the foreman has again somebody on top of him who oversees him, and again another one on top who oversees and oversees and oversees until we reach to the highest hierarchy. Now, to the one under, he will always have the idea that the one over him is the smart person. Then the next, then the next, then the next, then the next. So the smart people are the ones on top. All you need to do is whatever the person on top says, that is what should be carried out down below. Another thing that we get out from this myth that smart people are the ones on top is there seems to be already an impression that the one on top is responsible for the one under, and the one, like say, we have the one who tightens the nut and we have the foreman. Now, the responsibility of the foreman is to try, since we have these layers of commands already, then what the foreman does is to try to inform the one above him of what's going on under. So I would say that the chief or the principal job of this foreman is to inform the one that is on top, and the one on top is to inform his boss, and his boss is the one that is on top over him, and then the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. I would say that this is something very counterproductive because in the first place, the use of the foreman, because of his experience, he is supposed to help the one that tightens the knot to make him produce more or tighten more knots. But here we are, because of this erroneous understanding, and because of the setup, and because of how we reward people for what they do. This has become a natural effect. I hope you see that point. Now we move on to the fourth myth. And it says, we are hired to be obedient and not to use one's common sense. This is the idea, again, drawn from this previous myth that smart people are the ones on top. Now, these people on top are the ones who make strategies for the company, and they would say that if these strategies will only be religiously handled or religiously carried out, then everything will work out well. So what is emphasized after the strategy is really obedience and not common sense. Going further, and the fifth myth is orders are orders. It is very funny that as a result of all these things that was handed down to us, people starts to have this idea that work is the activity itself. That is work to them. But many times, let me just illustrate to show what I mean by this. Let's take the case of a manager who wants to call a certain supplier because he wants to talk to the supplier. Now, what he does is he calls somebody, and then he tells this somebody to call Mr. So-and-so because I want to talk to him. Now, what is the objective? Many times, I would say, many times, because of this idea that was handed down to us, is the idea that the order is really the call and not the manager's need to talk to the supplier. So what will happen? This guy will go, and then there will be obstacles that he will encounter, like the telephone is busy, the telephone is dead, he does not have a telephone number. So what happens to that activity? What happens to that order is that because of these obstacles, he cannot anymore pursue the real objective of the manager to call the supplier. Do you see that? And lo and behold, the worker will say, I have already done my job. In other words, he just happened to be an activity-oriented worker. But did he accomplish anything? As far as the need of the manager, the real objective? I believe not. We have another myth that says there is no difference between reward and salary. We have again to remember that the environment that they have is really quite different from the environment that we have now, because employment today is quite different from how people were employed back then. I made this distinction because I want to point out the difference of a very classic idea of what reward is in terms of cash. So we have this kind of reward system that if you are not late, then you will have a bonus. If you can do this, here bonus there at the end of the year, then you have another remuneration of these things. So we think of reward this way. So because of that, we think that, especially employers, thinks that this is the way to motivate a worker. But little does employers know that this is not the only reward that employer really needs. Now, of course, money is one, and I have no dispute with regards to that. But there is this other need, and let me try to differentiate these two. Cash is a strong motivator, and I have no question about that. But it has a unique product, which, when tallied, has an uneven equation. Let me explain. When workers do not get a raise, we get dissatisfied with the job. But it does not mean that when we get a raise, it motivates a worker to work harder. Now, let's be honest about this. To elaborate, it only motivates a worker to stay on the job because of the level of security that it provides. And this is the first thing that is important that will motivate the person. When he is hungry, he is motivated to work so that he can fill the basic needs of hunger. That's the first one. But then there is this other need that motivates a person. And this is the non-material need. And how this need is gratified? It fundamentally is determined on the person's social status. So while the first is about material things, this other one is the person's achievement, its creativity. In other words, respect, relationship, development, and achievement that are primarily based within the institution and to a larger extent, the people within its community. So the myth, there is no difference between reward and salary, this myth has to stand to be corrected. To move on, the seventh myth is to grab every opportunity that appears. The employer's reason why he tries to keep the employee is because of the fact that they have become valuable to them. So they try to retain them either through salary increase, privileges, retirement plans, and that is the essence of the benefits. And the essence of the value of an employee is not so much how long he has been with the company, but more on how well has he helped the company. That is the value of an employee. On the other hand, however, an employee does not think that way. To the employee, they will have to try to grab every opportunity that appears. So that if there is an opening next door, the employee would right away think of jumping off to the next opportunity and then to the next and to the next and to the next and to the next. However, the employee must bear in mind that culture in the company has to do with the success of the company. What will happen if supposing you do not have the right culture of the company because people come and go? Because of our tight competition these days, it will not be long for your company to suffer the effect of it. Because you will not only have the good service, you will not only have a good turnover in terms of efficiency, in terms of accomplishments, and more importantly, in terms of your brand name. Now think with me. Which would you rather have? A stable company that you will see yourself growing into it and prospering into it because you have the culture, you know each other, you have the teamwork, you have collaboration, or the kind of company that has a lot of tension, a lot of problem, a lot of conflicts, and there will always be somebody up there who is closer to Mr. So-and-so, and the politics is there, and on and on and on and on and on. So there you are. The myth that every opportunity has to be grabbed is again a deterrent. To move on to the eighth myth, this is what we call the company backup. And you know, this is very real because most workers has this idea of the company. It is like an image or like an idea or something like a perception that there is something like something up there called the company. So people, when they encounter problems, they always have this impression that that will make them say that I am sure the company will come and solve these things. I am sure that the people up there, this company, will solve whatever problem we have. But actually, if you really come to think of it, waiting for somebody else to take action or solve our problem will not work. It never works. Forgetting, of course, that company is us. But this is not the case in sports. Let's use that as an illustration. In sports, players gather around and say that we have to solve this together. There is no such thing as the team will solve this for us. In other words, it is them who needs to solve problems. There is no such thing as the company, the perception, the image, the hierarchy that is called the company. Can you imagine? I am sure you can understand what I'm trying to say, because this is always the case. Like it is not my business. This is not my business. It is not my business to solve the problem of the company. It is the company who will solve it. Now, the last myth I would submit is the lack of money is the measure of poverty. Just recently, a very interesting and the comment was raised on how do we measure poverty. Of course, we have answers like the actual income that you have. It is by consumption that you are able to afford. So in other words, this has always something to do with money. But like I said, it's interestingly observed, measurement of poverty does not really lie there in the real sense. It, however, lies on the hope that things will improve. Now think with me. There are a lot of people who are in poverty, especially here in the Philippines. We have poverty. But if you give hope to these people that things will improve, they still continue to have the drive because of this hope that is within them. So, to measure poverty in terms of consumption and what they can afford is actually not a true measurement of poverty. However, if a person loses his hope to improve, then he is in dire poverty. That, I would say, is the measure of poverty. And this because it is the reason and the driver that will motivate a man to acquire these things, to afford these things, to be able to increase his income, so on and on and on and on. But without this driver, this person, again, is in poverty. I do not know with you, but I hope you will start to measure things according to your hope of accomplishing things more than how much money you have in your pocket, because this is the real driver. This is the one that can really engage you to have these things that you need, have these things that you hope to have. So, okay, that is, we have already enumerated the whole 9 myths, and I have also narrated the story behind all these things. I have also narrated why we do things in a peculiar manner and how our previous era has indeed influenced our present day mindset on how things should be done. And this is the one that is responsible why, despite having the map and the compass, I would say that we are still lost because of the gap of these myths that we carry along with us in our mindsets. The next question is how to realign ourselves. Now, Let me bring you back to that picture that I have given out to you in the previous audio about this lost person. You look at him, you can really sympathize with this fellow. And after hearing me out, enumerating all those myths that I have explained to you, that I have labored to make you understand, here you are. You do not only see yourself in the small trap, but you also begin to see the bigger picture and how this has become a very big messed up. And when you begin to see it that way, you do not only see yourself, but you see the entirety of the big mess. Then what you are looking at is just the map. You're not still using the compass. So you say, okay, I see it. This is the map. This is a big mess. I know where I am. But then what? What now? The greater drawback, I believe, is not so much about how I can get out of here, or who am I to clean up the mess. So in other words, the greater drawback the moment you see the whole picture is not so much about I cannot even look at the eye of my boss, I am just one in the many, that this is too big for me, this is supposed to be enjoyable and a piece of cake, or I'll get fired. Not so much in that, but why should I be the one to do it? In other words, that is not what I am hired to do. That's the job of the people up there. That's their job. That's their contribution. I'm just one hand here. They are the brain. That, I would say, is exactly my point. You are indeed a victim of the very myth that has been enumerated. Yes, you must take part to clean up the mess. Yes, you need others to cooperate. Yes, there is some form of priest, but unless you are clear about your significant part in the entire building block, you can never get into your real occupation and start to fill in the gap that is missing. Your commitment to the group effort will not make a thing, and neither will it make the company work efficiently, and you will never be well fitted to ride all storms at the top. I hope that this unique value that I have shared regarding the 9 myths will in and of itself set you to be attuned to our true reality. This reality that most people have an inkling already but are holding back and therefore taking their chances. To continue, if you want to know more, if you want to know the how and where to start, if you want to take a gleam of the lighter path, if you want to break out your quicksand, and more importantly, why you should clean up the mess, I also have with me 2 sets of study or a tool that will blow your mind, expose secrets of ways that most are not making use of, and the one that is responsible, that has produced the entire mess. Yes, the one solely responsible that has caused the entire mess. And because of thoughtlessness, this tool is not utilized. It is not even heeded or given serious attention. It lies there dormant. It is thought of as something that has no overtone because it is not readily seen on the surface. But if you want to dig down from what is on the surface and are serious enough to get to the bottom of all this, determined enough to distinguish the difference of our so-called head knowledge versus the determinate knowledge, then the 2 sets of study or tools that I am offering is something that you have to get hold of. It will give you more than head knowledge. This instructional information that I have created is unique in and of itself. This one is unlike any other business book or help program today that I know of, and also cannot be found on textbook or business journals. This stimulating module has never been done in such a simple format in comparison to those other academic and scholarly reasoning fitted only to straight-jacket learners. Transforming your mindset that is well fitted to our present environment is what you will discover will set apart the triumphant from the distressed, from the one that blames their company for their misery. It will set apart the exceptional from the average, and from the one who is just doing their work to collect a paycheck. It will separate the intellectual versus the rigorous from the one who assumes that they are powerless to change their circumstances, that there is more to your career than what you have made yourself to believe or been made to believe. And what's more, this study or tool will bring out the best in you because it will align you to a notable work to your real significance. But let me tell you this, I always stand on a position that I exist on the foundation of the people who are willing to break the ground to help themselves, work their way into it, because like I said, this study or tool is designed to accomplish change in you, a tool to transform, a tool to regulate your existing mindset. This study or tool is also helpful for businessmen or businesswomen who wish to learn the struggles of their worker, and especially to those who are the serious workers, those that can really help you attain the better end of this big mess that our business world is in today. To enable you to get hold of the two sets of study or tool, click the button below to obtain it. Lastly, make sure you don't miss out this chance to change and transform your occupation, your career outlook, and most importantly, your vibrancy to face every personal challenge. I have used this tool in my work, in my project, and in whatever circumstance that I have gone myself into, and have surpassed most of my undertakings, though I can assure you that you cannot please everyone on the personal level. Again, to enable you to get hold of the two sets of study or tool, click the button below to obtain it. Thank you and have a pleasant day.